The Aventon Soltera is a light electric bike with full functions and costs $1,200. If you've read any of my e-bike reviews, you know I tend to gravitate toward e-bikes that enhance the cycling experience, rather than approximate a moped. E-bike maker Aventon today announced a new bike in the former category called the Soltera, starting at $1,199. It looks like an enticing new option for those who want a bike that mostly looks and feels like a regular bike, while still maintaining some of the niceties you'd expect from more stereotypical e-bikes. The Soltera weighs in at 18.5 kilograms, which is very light by the usual e-bike standards. Granted, it's not quite as lightweight as some of recent stealthy bikes, the Ride 1-Up Roadster and the 10-Ways Seago 600 both weigh in at about 15 kilograms, but it's still as light as even some analog bikes. NYC's ubiquitous city bikes weigh 20.5 kg, and the electrified models weigh even more. More importantly, I appreciate that Aventon offers a bit more bang for your buck than some of the lightweight competition. Unlike the aforementioned models, the Soltera has a removable battery, which at 365 Wh is also larger than what you'd find on most e-bikes with integrated batteries. Aventon says the battery is good for an average of 67 kilometers on assist level to a 5 with a 165 lbs rider. In fact, the company provides a full breakdown for the range at different assist levels, ranging from 101 km at the lowest assist level to 32 kilometers with the throttle only. The motor comes in at 350 W, which should be more than enough for most city riding, and will let you go up to 20 mph on either throttle or pedal assist mode. The Soltera is also one of the rare affordable lightweight bikes with an optional 7-speed configuration if you do need to regularly tackle some serious hills or want to go faster than the 20 mph motor cutoff. Usually, these lighter bikes only come in a single-speed configuration, which is nice for simplicity, but not the best if you want to maximize efficiency. It would have been nice if Aventon offered a belt drive option for even lower maintenance on the single speed, but chains are plenty reliable too. As for braking, you get Tech-TRO caliper brakes with a single-speed model and Tech-TRO mechanical disc brakes on the 7-speed configuration. In my experience, ream brakes are totally fine for most e-bike riding, but you might want to opt for the 7-speed option if you want the most stopping power. You also get integrated headlights and taillights, both of which are very bright, and the latter which are neatly integrated into the seat stays. That's a neat detail I've only seen on way more expensive bikes. Even the LCD display is surprisingly nice, with a high-resolution color panel that provides plenty of information and can sync to a phone app for further customization. I actually received my review unit a few hours prior to publishing this piece, and at first glance, it looks like a sweet bike. The headlight and tail lights are surprisingly bright, the paint job is clean, and the geometry feels comfortable. My one caveat is that the bike uses a cadence sensor rather than a fancier torque sensor, but those are exceedingly rare under $1,500. I like the balance Aventon is striking here. It's not aiming to be the absolute lightest e-bike on the market, but rather balancing weight and functionality in a convenient manner. It'll be putting it through its paces in the coming days, so stay tuned to T&W for more. Dell's new XPS 13 Plus makes weird design choices in the name of power. Here's some nerd trivia for you. What laptop has a haptic trackpad, a touch-sensitive strip above the keyboard, and no headphone jack? No, Apple isn't bringing back the touch bar. Instead, Dell seems to have taken a page out of Cupertino's book and updated its flagship 13-inch laptop with design elements that look cool, but offer questionable practicality. Perhaps most notably, the function row was removed in favor of a touch-sensitive strip which can toggle between shortcuts and regular function buttons. Unfortunately, these shortcuts are not customizable, so it's pretty much most of the bad about the touch bar with none of the good. That said, the soft buttons appear to be a bit more separated from the keyboard, so hopefully, they won't be as prone to accidental touches. Meanwhile, the touchpad is now a haptic touchpad, much like Apple's MacBook Air or the Surface Laptop Studio. But Dell decided to make the borders invisible for a seamless design. The entire palm rest is one big sheet of glass, and the touchpad occupies an area roughly between the left side of the spacebar and right side of the right Alt key according to Ars Technica. And again, there's no headphone jack. leaving you with just a Thunderbolt for ports for wired connectivity, one of which will often be taken up by your charger. Those likely controversial changes aside, the laptop also now offers a lattice-free keyboard, which is to say there is now a minimal gap between keys rather than a chiclet-style keyboard. And despite the touchpad's odd invisibility, I have found that haptic touchpads 02 are pretty much always better than regular, clickable ones. Hopefully, this one is too. I've got to admit, the design at least looks pretty rad. Still, when I first read about the XPS 13 Plus, I was ready to go on a rant. For the past several years, the XPS 13 has been one of the very best laptops you can buy. It pioneered thin bezel displays. Its design is still one of the best on the market, and it offered excellent performance to boot, repeating two of Apple's most criticized design choices by replacing the function buttons with a not a touch bar strip and omitting the headphone jack and then making the track pad invisible seems like a strong case of fixing what ain't broke. So what can possibly justify these changes? Simple. They free up more room for performance. The XPS 13 Plus is equipped with Intel's new 12th general chips, which would already provide a major year-to-year improvement with a simple upgrade thanks to a new chip architecture. But Dell takes things a step further by going from a 15W TDP to a 28W1, giving the processor much more headroom for performance. Unfortunately, a higher wattage processor also means more heat and battery consumption otherwise. We'd all have desktop CPUs in our laptops, so Dell is essentially left with two options barring some serious thermal innovation. Either you make the chassis larger, or you free up more space inside the laptop. Dell chose the latter, allowing it to theoretically squeeze out a lot more performance out of the laptop without increasing the size of the chassis. The company says larger fans allow it to provide 55% more airflow without increasing noise or temperature relative to the old XPS. All that being said, it's worth noting that this is also the type of justification Apple has given for some of its malign design choices in the past as well, such as removing the headphone jack from the iPhone and the infamous butterfly keyboard. Whether the trade-offs are worth remains to be seen. Let's hope Dell truly delivers on the performance front once I'm able to get my hands on a review unit. The game giant behind Grand Theft Auto is buying Zynga for nearly $13 billion. The massive video game publisher behind Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption announced plans on Monday to acquire the mobile game maker Zynga in a deal worth $12.7 billion. Take-Two Interactive said its cash and stock deal for Zynga is worth 64% more than the company's closing share price on Friday, January 7th. Take-Two Interactive is well known in the video game industry for massive hits like GTA, Red Dead Redemption, and the NBA 2K basketball franchise, while Zynga is one of the biggest mobile gaming companies in the world. Though Zynga's greatest name recognition comes from the long-dormant Farmville franchise, it's found success in recent years with licensed mobile games from Harry Potter and Star Wars, among other things. Zynga also owns Words with Friends. As part of the deal, which Take-Two said is expected to close in June, Zynga will continue to operate as a standalone company. Former Zynga CEO Frank Gibeau and Zynga president of publishing Bernard Kim will remain in charge of the Zynga subsidiary. Going forward, Zynga's nearly 3,000 employees will work on the creation of new mobile games for many of the iconic franchises within Take-Two's portfolio of intellectual property. Shares of Zynga surged nearly 48% in early trading Monday following the announcement. Chevrolet launched the cheapest electric model to date, a $30,000 crossover SUV. General Motors revealed its latest electric pickup truck on Wednesday at CES 2022. But the Silverado EV isn't the only new electric vehicle GM announced. The automaker took the wraps off of its upcoming Chevrolet Equinox EV, a small electric SUV that will cost around $30,000 in its base configuration. The Equinox EV will bring another low-cost electric option to the country's most popular vehicle segment, compact SUVs. It's not that $30,000 is a small amount of money, it isn't. But historically, making the switch from a gas-powered vehicle to an electric one often meant buying something expensive, like a Tesla. The Equinox EV and similarly priced electric SUVs like the Hyundai Kona Electric and Chevy Bolt EV should make going electric more palatable and accessible to more people. GM didn't offer many details about the Equinox EV, The SUV will be available in both fleet and retail versions, have RS and LT trims, and use GM's new Ultium battery platform. Judging by the photos GM shared, we can see that the Equinox EV will have a large touchscreen and a second driver-facing display. A slim light bar stretches across the SUV's front end. The Equinox EV will launch in fall 2023, and we'll learn more about the model's range and other details closer to that date. GM also confirmed that an electric version of the Blazer SUV named, you guessed it, the Blazer EV will be available in spring 2023. GM plans to phase out sales of combustion vehicles by 2035, and it's launching a slew of EVs across its brands to make that happen. The GMC Hummer EV pickup truck went into production in December. The Chevy Silverado EV arrives in 2023. And the Cadillac Lyriq ships out this year. Do you think China will dominate the electric car market? You may be wrong. In the wake of surging electric vehicle sales in China, it might seem that the Chinese market has already won the EV race, meaning the race to secure global dominance of this new technology. But this judgment seems premature. Most commentary focuses on Chinese strength in EV technology and production, or the size of China's EV market. But this misses crucial factors that will affect how, and even whether, China's EVs are adopted across the world. The question is not just whether China will dominate the global EV market, but also whether the EV can help China achieve the technological, economic, and geopolitical power it seeks. In other words, even if China gets good at making EVs, will EVs be good for China? The EV is a clear example of an emerging industrial revolution, one that combines low carbon and digital technology. So the country that takes the lead in producing and using EVs will likely be highly competitive on the world stage. Historical comparisons can help us understand what is at stake here. For example, consider the EPA or ability of the global rise of this during the 20th century, and its simultaneous domination of the traditional car industry. The US situation back then and the Chinese situation today share many similarities. In both cases, major technological change was happening within each country in parallel with a rise in their geopolitical power. And just as the traditional car became not only the main form of citizen transport, but also a key symbol of social change during the 20th century, so too will it be for the EV in the 21st. However, at the time of the mass adoption of the motor car, the US enjoyed a unique position. As a liberal capitalist country, its growing power was reassuring, or at least preferable to communism or fascism, for other powerful countries at the time, like the UK. The US also exemplified and exported forms of cultural creativity, including jazz and blues music, new fashion styles, and the technicolor movies that were hugely attractive to people across the world. These forms of cultural capital were heavily drawn onto the market. The American dream of personal car ownership, just one of the reasons there are now approximately 1.4 billion cars on Earth. It also helped that the car belonged to an entirely new industrial sector at that time, facing no established competition. None of these factors today apply to China regarding the EV. Most significant is China's almost total and, if anything, worsening absence of political acceptability and cultural attractiveness in overseas car markets, especially those of wealthy regions like Europe. China's ultimate domination of the EV sector would require Chinese EVs to compete successfully in these established markets. But these are already populated by some of the world's most advanced companies, including Toyota, General Motors, and Volkswagen, as well as consumers with high expectations. With the rise of car markets in developing countries like India, it's possible that Chinese EVs could achieve success even without making much headway into markets in the West, but China's tricky political status will make it hard there, too. This problem matters even more for EVs than for cars, because of the profound difference between the two. The car is a comparatively simple machine. It's basically an engine on wheels, with various additions to make it more enticing and comfortable for its driver and passengers. The EV, by comparison, is a totally new technology that's part of a much larger, unpredictable transition in urban mobility. Simply replacing cars with EVs will not solve congestion or transport inequalities in society, and EVs will create challenging environmental problems of their own, such as the pollution created by producing and recycling of batteries. Plus, EVs themselves still have a long way to evolve. making political and cultural misgivings about China's role in creating them more important. For instance, cars have been widely associated with individual freedom, one of the main reasons for their global popularity. Their digitization threatens to make the EV a vehicle for unprecedented levels of surveillance and control of people's mobility. In a 2015 experiment, two hackers were able to take control of a reporter's car and remotely direct its steering wheel. Situations like these could well generate fears around authoritarian control and reduced privacy, further diminishing Chinese EV's appeal overseas. Finally, the motorcar emerged at the moment of discovery of a seemingly boundless energy source, oil, and when concern for the effect of its waste products was largely absent. Today, in contrast, a major driver of the EV transition is its sustainability, meaning that the environmental impact of mass EV adoption will be closely scrutinized by customers and citizens worldwide. Chinese companies hoping to enter overseas markets seem to be poorly prepared to manage such controversy. Currently, therefore, the most likely scenario seems not to be unrivaled Chinese EV leadership. China will be a major player in the EV if only given the size of its domestic market and the level of government support it provides its EV industry. Yet this will increasingly be matched by intensifying competition with Western companies that are beginning to take the EV seriously, and that may be better placed to manage the complex social and political hurdles ahead for this new technology. Article by David Tyfield, Professor in Sustainable Transitions and Political Economy, Lancaster University. This article is republished from the conversation under a Creative Commons license. Read the original article. The Great Resignation just got greater. Here are 4 reasons why. Several months in, the Great Resignation continues to upend workforces across the country. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a record 4.4 million employees quit their jobs in September. That bested the previous record freshly set in August, when another 4.3 million people dropped their 2-week notices. The trend has become impossible to ignore, and reckoning industries are now asking the big question, why? While there isn't a neat answer to that, some labor analysts speculate it could be a confluence of factors. In all situations, it's clear employers should take note, as the Great Resignation threatens to scuttle a full economic recovery following nearly 2 years of pandemic. The labor market is still in a shrunken state, 4 million jobs short of pre-pandemic times, and the number of job vacancies stood at 10.4 million in September.